Hello everyone! In this video I would like to propose an idea that I would love to get your feedback on. I don't know if anyone else have made a similar idea in a posted video, at least not that I have seen. When doing the research to see what people would want and what Blizzard has explained about revamping old zones, especially to add replayability, I have found that some kind of sacrifice would have had to been made in order to do this, although so far no plan has been made. The inspiration for this video was actually down to various means. It was mostly inspired by the law of the time skip that happens between Shadowlands and going into Dragonflight, but it also took inspiration from both the Cataclysm revamp as well as the garrisons from Warlords of Draenor. So to add some kind of premise, a blue post had been made saying that Blizzard didn't want to do a full worldwide revamp like they did with Cataclysm, as there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of work that goes into that. Not to mention any content that might be cut, like a raid tier that was speculated to have happened with garrisons in order to make garrisons function. Which, would have not made sense in the grand scheme of things. So if Blizzard doesn't want to cut content in order to make revamps, or to not spend less time on other pieces of content, my idea is this. Since Shadowlands, the story with the Scourge is yet to be told. Especially as we learned that back in Wrath of the Lich King, there must always be a Lich King. But since the cinematic for Shadowlands shows Sylvanas destroying the Helm of Domination, the Scourge has been allowed to run rampant. So the idea is this: when the story involving the Scourge is going to be told, we can start with the Eastern Plaguelands, doing some kind of zone-wide event where the Scourge are attacking Light's Hope Chapel and we team up the Paladins to secure the chapel. Then we slowly drive back the Scourge to Stratholme, and while doing so, any areas that we have secured, we'll have guards stationed there, we have builders and workers rebuilding the buildings there, we also have druids trying to revitalise the lands, uncorrupting the area. And all the while we are pushing back the Scourge to Stratholme. And so when we get to Stratholme, it has been completely overrun by the Scourge there, including the Living Side and Balnazar, who is the Dreadlord in disguise that infiltrated the Scarlet Crusade a long time ago. And so we try and liberate Stratholme by purging it completely from the Scourge. And when we do that, once we have finished there, all the rest of the zone gets revamped once we have done that. So now you have you have green scenery, you have trees, you have new buildings, settlements, all that kind of thing. And then we start making our way to the Western Plaguelands. So the same thing will also happen with Stratholme, right? When I mentioned about builders and guards and druids and things like that, we actually have people like builders and stuff rebuilding Stratholme, reclaiming Stratholme. And while the rest of the zone gets revamped, Stratholme will still be in the rebuilding phase. So that will come into fruition when we start working our way into Western Plaguelands. The same kind of thing, right? Even though most of the Western Plaguelands has been reclaimed and things like that, we're still having trouble reclaiming places like Anderhal. So for the most part, it is just finishing up the remnants of the Scourge in Western Plaguelands. And once the Western Plaguelands has been dealt with, that's when something like Stratholme would have been rebuilt, right? It's completely done, it's finished, and Stratholme will serve as a kind of like sanctuary for both Horde and Alliance to be able to explore. Stratholme becomes its own central hub. And so, as a flavorful thing as well, because the Scourge has been running rampant in those two zones for a long time now. So the TLDR of that is that Blizzard doesn't have to do a Cataclysm 2.0. They don't have to do a Garrisons where they have to sacrifice a raid tier to make something work. Instead, they can do this as a storytelling kind of representation of some kind of progression, while also at the same time they use that sort of thing to revamp the zone as you're telling the story. So Again, like in this example, the Scourge is in Eastern and Western Plaguelands. They could do some sort of story quest there, whether it's like a main story quest, daily hub, or some kind of like progressional event, anything like that. And as you're progressing along that, parts of the zone starts to get revamped, with the last bit of the zone perhaps not taking place until you progress into the next zone, for example. And it doesn't just have to be Eastern and Western Plaguelands. It could also, we could take this to Northrend if we wanted to, because that is the main source of the Scourge. And they can even do this every patch if they wanted to, so they don't have to necessarily stay within one patch, or they don't have to build up to it. For example, when they're telling a story over an expansion, they don't have to have it as an overarching story. They can most certainly contain it inside one story, patch even, sorry. And they can do that every patch. So they could say Eastern Plagueland questline / revamp is like, for example, 11.0. Then you have the Western Plagueland story in 11.1.5 or something like that. So they can certainly do that in little sizes, in just those sorts of like contained patches, so that they don't have to make such a sweeping change and have it as like a selling feature. It would be a nice little visual representation and things like that. But what do you think, guys? Would you like some kind of storytelling revamp, or would you rather have it done all in the pre-patch like Cataclysm? Or would you rather have something even more extensive that they kind of have to cut content for? Feel free to leave your comments down below, guys. And until next time, this is SwayAwayGeorge signing off.